Hi, I'm Charles Feltman.
And my name is Edgar, and we're here for Trust on Purpose.
Today we have a kind of a little bit different podcast in that we're really going to ask questions of ourselves and each other and you rather than talk more specifically about things that people can do. Our topic is trust and AI, or AI and trust, and what effects that might have on the way that people approach trusting each other at work, at home, in our communities, and so on. A couple days ago, I read just a short article in the Los Angeles Times newspaper. It was written by someone whose child, I can't remember whether it's son or daughter, was in a school where she was asked to do an oral report before the class. All the students were doing this on their country of origin. I guess it might have been an international school. I'm not sure. Anyway, so she went off to find out information about her country of origin, which is Costa Rica. And one of the big things in Costa Rica is sloths. You could go there and see sloths. So she wanted to bring in a picture or two of sloths as sort of visual aids for her report in class. And so she went on the internet and searched for pictures of sloths and found a few that some of them, very cute. It almost looked like the sloths were, smiling for the camera and that sort of thing. So her parent, who wrote the article, kind of took a second look at it and came to find out that most of the pictures that she had downloaded were in fact generated by AI. They weren't actual pictures of real sloths in anywhere, zoo or out in the world or anywhere else, but rather they were pictures that came from an AI, which raised the question for me, where are we going to go with this when we can't trust that anything that we see on the internet or perhaps in other places as well is actually something that comes from a human being or from the natural world, that it purports to be an authentic photograph, for example, or document or video, but in fact, it's not. It's generated by artificial intelligence in some way. And our set of questions, perhaps, that we're really diving into here today has to do with what effects that might have as we move into the future on trust, interpersonal trust at work, trust between individuals and organizations, trust among groups in society, and so on, as people use the internet and even beyond the internet, because obviously documents can be faked in an organization and shared around, have nothing to do with the internet. Something could be created and shared around that looks like an official document or a real video that turns out to be a fake. So what does that have to do? What impact is that going to have on our ability to trust each other, or our desire to trust each other, or our level of comfort and safety in trusting each other? That's kind of where we're exploring today. Ela, what comes up for you as we think about that?
For me, it really makes me worry, and I'm hopeful and optimistic, but I know that this is probably my rose-colored glasses. I think number one, transparency, for people to say or state, this is an AI generated document, or this is an AI generated, or I have used AI to help write, create whatever that is, and not to hold something or claim that something that has been 100% AI generated as your own work, as your own thinking, as your own creativity. So for me, that's an integrity line. And I would hope, but I think we already see, you're reading articles like this, that it's easy to be confused because there isn't that transparency, that people aren't saying or aren't being forthright about this is an AI generated image. And I think this is interesting because I also talked to our lovely Joseph Myers this week. We're talking about his trust distrust app. And you and I did that exercise and report with him. And he's added a button in the report that will generate an AI image that represents a piece of the report. And I'm like, I think that's really cool. And so he showed me the AI image that was generated for him in his report. And I'm like, I love that. That is really, really cool. But again, fully transparent. This is an AI generated image. And I think for me, the sticky right now is how will other people be in integrity about this isn't, part of it is, part of it isn't. And so that's kind of the first stroke for me. Because if I find out that someone that I trust to be completely capable, reliable, sincere, have a lot of care, that they've used AI and not disclosed it, but actually held it as their own, that would be a massive trust breakdown for me. Massive.
Me as well. And what you said a moment ago, will people be in integrity around that? That's a question for me. Will they be? Right there, you have something that comes in as suspicion or doubt, which immediately sets our distrust network in our neurobiology on alert. Do I need to be careful about what this person may present to me? Should I be? Should I be careful about that and really kind of double check? So this is a question that comes up in my mind as I'm saying this is is it important to distinguish between AI and human generated material? What's the value in that?
I'm holding my breath because I think that's the value of, I want to just repeat, integrity. I think it's the transparency and the level of trust in a relationship. And if this is not something that's part of that disclosure or transparency or consistency, and I'm immediately going to, oh, this is a really important conversation for teams to have about how do we use AI? How do we navigate it? How do we support each other? How are we transparent about it? I don't like, I'm literally vibrating to think that I could be in relationship with someone that I trust, for example, you, and you don't disclose or I don't disclose to you. I don't know what that relationship could look like. And I don't think it's one that I would feel safe, where I would, I don't know, like my brain is just, oh, so I'm going to shut up. What do you think?
Well, what you're pointing to, I think, is that the importance for you, and I would agree with you, it's important for me as well, the importance of honesty and integrity in the relationship that I have with people in my life, important relationships that I have with people in my life. So that if they say one thing, or even if they don't say, "Oh, yeah, no, this is something I made myself," when in fact it was generated by AI, but simply they don't say it was generated by AI and leave it to you to find out or decide or not or whatever, and then you find out it was. I think the basic thing there is that there's a betrayal of trust there, which is what you're saying. That I trusted that what you put forward, whatever, in whatever context it is something that you, in fact, did yourself. So, okay, so we then have a conversation on the team, for example, about generating documents, generating whatever it is that the team is doing. How much AI use is okay there, or if we're going to have an agreement with each other that we can use AI to completely generate stuff or just give us ideas or whatever it is. That's the conversation, is what's our commitment to each other around this. So in a work setting, I can see where that is important to be able to do. What I guess I wonder beyond that, though, if you and I are part of a team, and we are in a sense, we're part of a team, and I come up with something really brilliant as something that I'm saying in one of our podcasts. And you're like, wow, that's really great, Charles. That's really cool. And then you find out later that an AI generated that. And I just regurgitated it, but I didn't say it. What we need to do is have a conversation between ourselves about what our standards are around, disclosure about it and that sort of thing. So we do, and all as well. But then what happens outside of that? So if I go to the internet to get some data that we want to use in one of our podcasts or something. Or if we're doing a piece of work with a client and we want to have some data that we want to bring to them. And those data are generated by an AI, but I don't know that. And then we find out later, or the client finds out later, or someone who's listening to our podcast finds out later that that was actually just AI generated data that may actually have been full of what I guess they call hallucinations, material that the AI made up, which seems to happen, although the creators of AIs are working really hard to try and keep that out of there. But the problem is AIs are full of bias that's injected by what is fed into them by the people who feed them, if you will. So, how do we trust that stuff? How do we trust what we bring to the table, if you will?
This feels so heavy and so daunting, so complicated. Like, how do we navigate this? And again, I'm not saying, I think both of us are very clear that we're not proposing that we have answers to this. We really wanted to be in the question. And like, I'm as overwhelmed as anybody right now.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to that honesty, integrity, transparency. And the same way, unfortunately, we've had to learn for many years about fake news. And just because you see something posted on social media doesn't make it true. So validate your sources, do your due diligence. Where did this come from? Is there comparable data? Is this in line with what other research in this topic or area has come up with? I don't know. There's got to be some way, because we care about sharing true, validated, not making shit up and holding it as real. And so, how do we do that? And that comes to us as humans and individuals, because worried isn't the right word, because I care about my personal reputation and the integrity that how I want to be in my life. And so that would be something that would be important to me, to make sure that I do my due diligence, or I don't not disclose, or whatever that is. But we know, if we look left and right in our world, that's where the tricky comes, is not everybody will feel that way. Not everybody will want to be that way. And then what?
The other thing that comes up for me is that adds a whole lot of work to my workload. If I'm doing due diligence on anything and everything that I am bringing into to convey to somebody else, I have to stop and go, okay, wait a minute. Let me just check on the sources of these data, or let me just check on the source of this quote or this video that I'm showing or whatever it is. That in and of itself can be a practically a full-time job. That's why news companies have fact checkers. That's their job, to go do the fact checking. And I don't have the resources to pay a fact checker. Now, there used to be a website that you could go to look up, in effect, done fact checking. It would check on stories, internet rumors and stuff. I can't remember the name of it, but I used to use it a lot. Now I think there's just too much out there. So I don't actually go to that site, but maybe something like that on a bigger scale might be a valuable resource. But again, it's all going to depend on who's going to actually do the checking, and do I believe them?
Yeah.
And like you said, do other people care enough? Do other people care about whether or not what they're passing on is in fact valid, that they've done due diligence on it in a world where stuff can be made up pretty easily that looks really real?
Well, it takes all sorts to make our world go round. We know that. And so we already know that I think people will have very different opinions about AI, and different beliefs about how it should or shouldn't be used, that are different than what we're talking about here. And so let's just acknowledge that
Yeah.
that is true. That is true. How does that impact us? And how do we navigate in a way that's true and feels in integrity for us? And I think as this continues to unfold, we're going to bump into trickier and trickier and trickier situations. And ooh, it will take teams that have developed strong trust with each other, that they have a foundation of psychological safety, so that when, not if, but when these super complicated situations come to light, whether it's proactively or reactively, that they have the strength in the relationship to be able to talk about it, even if it's deeply disappointing, even if it feels deeply out of integrity, even if it's been absolute trust damaging, that there's an ability to talk about it and learn from it.
Yes, that's what we kind of what we preach in general. Yeah.
Kind of what we hoped for. But this in particular, like, I mean, AI is still so new and it's still, what is it going to evolve into?
Yeah.
Now, I will say transparently, AI is open on my browsers all the time. Looking at a blank sheet of paper terrifies me. So, absolutely, get me started and then away I go. I'm like, thank you for pointing my brain in one particular direction. Let me see what I can do with that. And so I absolutely love, or I'm struggling to write a sentence. What other way can I write this? So I appreciate the value that it can bring and the support that it can bring. I'm also very clear that I'm still me doing my work, coming from my heart.
And that actually is that kind of goes around again to the question that came up for me. What's important about that? That if you're honest, if you say, "Hey, here's my LinkedIn post that an AI created. I posed the question or gave the prompt, and the AI created this, and I think it's as good or better than what I could have done by myself, so I'm putting it out there." So I'm honest about AI developing it. So the question kind of comes to mind, what's important about whether or not AI develops it or I do myself? Or I do it in sort of a combination of getting some ideas from AI and then expanding on them and add my whatever, my 2 cents worth into it.
I feel that that's somewhat situational and somewhat about what has been pre-designed. So I'm making up the situation. I'm not super artistic or crafty, but let's say there's a marketing team trying to come up with a new concept and they're struggling. Or maybe they're not struggling. And maybe part of their creative process is, let's throw some prompts or ideas into AI and see what it generates. Maybe that's an agreed upon and a shared standard that can be absolutely part of the creative process. Or maybe the opposite standard is that we come up with our own, we see what we can do first as humans, what we can collectively do. And then if we're stuck, we use AI. So I think it really is, what are the agreements and the uses and the hows? When is it okay? When does it make sense? How are we disclosing it? How are we using it? Because I think it's really situational.
Yes, and the context is, I think, important. AI is great, doing all kind of stuff like that, and can be very useful. Everything from writing speeches to so one of the things in going back sort of to answer my own question, what's important about something being generated by a human versus by AI? And when I say sure, I'm talking about fully generated by a human or at least having some human input into it versus something that's just generated by an AI. I think one of the things that a lot of people would say, I may be wrong, but I think a lot of people would say something you said a few moments ago, that AI is not capable of generating something that has real human heart, empathy as part of it. And yet people are using it. They're going to AI therapists.
What? Hang on. Sorry, what?
People are using AI therapists.
Oh, I didn't know this was a thing. Wow.
Yes, it's a
Okay.
thing. People are now, not a whole lot of
Okay.
people yet, but yes, people are using AI as therapy or as a therapist, I guess, quote unquote. I've certainly haven't tried it.
I think I might have to because I'm super curious.
So intrigued by that, like, what?
What?
I heard about this, a couple of months ago, I guess, for the first time, and I was doing the same thing, going, "Oh my gosh, how does that work?" But apparently, the people who do this are quite satisfied, for the most part, with what they get. There's something there that people can connect with that feels like empathy, I think, even though it can't really be human empathy because it's generated by an AI. Going back to the sort of the question, what's important about it being something that at least has had some human fingerprints on it is that it's the humanity in it, the empathy, the heart in it that a human being brings to it, whatever it is something that an AI can't generate on its own. But that just might be a belief that we all have about humans, that there's something about being human that's unique and different from something that is than a machine, than a machine that's following a software program.
I think I mentioned this to you the last time we were talking, but there was a Forbes article that I recently read, and it was 8 workplace trends that will define 2025. And one of them is the rise of human centric leadership. As AI takes on traditional managerial tasks, leadership roles are transforming. Leaders who foster emotional connections and build cohesive teams will be in high demand. Key attributes include empathy, facilitating human and machine collaboration, focusing on talent development. This shift represents a fundamental change from task management to nurturing teams through rapid change. Leaders who adapt to this model will be crucial in balancing technological advancements with human needs in the age of AI. I loved how that was written. And so, I'm like, yay, AI. It has been really, really cool with some of the things that I've played with. And I'm just a baby beginner. And we're still all humans. We still need that human touch, that human empathy, that connectedness, that belonging, that sense of care. And so I think, again, like leaders that can help their teams navigate this balance of humanness and technology in a very complicated world.
Yes, that is really well put. I love that too. I remember you reading it last week or a couple weeks ago to me. And yeah, there's a lot there, but it really centers human relationship and that the human relationship is primary, that the human AI relationship is secondary. And its job, if you will, its role is focusing on tasks, jobs, getting certain things done. And that the humans then potentially could be freed for different kinds of activities related to whatever the organization, whatever the company is doing. Read a really interesting article by Seth Godin this morning in HBR about strategy. It's a really nice short piece on strategy and what makes strategy different from task planning and that sort of thing. And that could be something that more humans could focus on and really develop for their companies, leaving then the AI to do other things. And some would argue that AI could be really good at doing strategy, for example, even though Seth Godin says in his article that it takes empathy to create a really good strategy that looks out into the future and answers the question, what will people need and want?
Mm.
You have to be able to put yourself into the shoes of humans in the future, which is an amazing empathy activity. So I don't know about you, but these questions are like sort of orbiting around my head, it feels like. And I think there's a lot that we need to learn, a lot we need to think about and talk about. And I think what you've said more than once in this conversation is that the conversations that we have about this we need to have. We can't shy away from them, whether it's in a team, the entire organization, what we want our culture to look and feel like as we live in it. And we bring AI into it and deal with AI. How's that going to be in our organizational culture?
Mhm.
How's that going to be in our communities? How's that going to be in our politics? How's it going to be in other areas of our lives? So that, I think, is one of the things that I'm taking from our conversation is the need for honest, authentic conversation that takes these questions into account, that doesn't shy away from them and really tries to address them.
Mhm. And as we entered into this conversation, fully disclosing, like, we don't have the answers. We're not saying that this is what you should or shouldn't do, but the value of being in a conversation, even though we don't have a particular outcome, but we know that the topic is important to put on the table. And we know that this is something that leaders really need to be able to do, that it's not about having the answers of how is AI going to fit into this team or this organization or our culture, but rather, how is it? Let's talk about it. I'm not here with the answers, but collectively, let's decide what that looks like. And then we might bump into something and go, oh, we didn't think of that part. Or we're now in a conundrum. How do we manage this together? I think those are like
Yeah.
really amazing, powerful, and courageous things to do.
And it kind of perversely, it strikes me that we can also ask that question of an AI. How should we as a team, here are some parameters, how should we as a team deal with and use AI productively?
I wonder what it would say.
I know.
And maybe that helps form a conversation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was almost tempted to, while you were talking, go look, open ChatGPT and ask it. But yeah, I think we are rapidly moving into a world that those of us, well, of a certain age, may not necessarily be well equipped for, but we have to deal with it anyway because it's coming. And the best that we can do is have courageous, honest, authentic conversations and make choices based on those conversations that we believe are the best choices we can make together with each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think that there's maybe a follow up conversation here once we go on to Chat GPT and see what it says. Maybe it'll be like a sub post to be like, oh my gosh, this is interesting.
Yes, we
Yeah,
can put it in the show notes. Here's what ChatGPT
we'll put it in the
says.
show notes. There we go. There we go. I really appreciate being able to jump into a conversation and a topic that I don't really know a lot about and to just explore it with you. Like, I really thank you for creating space to do that.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I know there are a lot of really smart people who are grappling with these questions and who have a lot more experience with it than either of us do. And it's at that stage where a lot of experience isn't much yet. So even people like us who don't have a lot of experience and haven't really been thinking about it deeply for the last 4, 5, or 8 years can still have something to say of value in the
Yes.
conversation.
Yeah. And different perspectives and different experiences and different views. We welcome those
Yeah.
because that's collectively how we learn.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
On behalf of both Charles and myself, we want to say a big thank you to our producer and sound editor, Chad Penner, Hillary Rideout of Inside Out Branding, who does our promotion, our amazing graphics, and marketing for us. And our theme music was composed by Jonas Smith. If you have any questions or comments for us about the podcast, if you have a trust related situation that you'd like us to take up in one of our episodes, we'd love to hear from you at trust@trustonpurpose.org.
And we'd also like to thank you, our listeners. Take care and keep building trust on purpose. Until next time.
Until next time.